Good evening or good night to some of you. Chef Crystal and I welcome you to another fine live session here in CE 187. Welcome to week 4, everybody. Hey, week 3, you guys crushed it. We are awfully proud. Thank you so much for all of your hard work and your effort. Thank you to all that are reaching out, asking for help. I really, really appreciate it. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you, everybody, for keeping up on your attendance and urge you to continue doing so. It really makes our jobs a lot easier when we're not chasing people and we're able to focus on people that need help. So thank you so much for doing that. Chef Crystal, you have any comments about week 3?
Week 3, I don't have any comments. I don't have any comments for week 3, but I'm excited about week 4. I really am.
I know, this is a cool week, huh? Yeah.
It is. This is what I did for a very long time. So I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Well, cool. Take the reins. It's all you. This class, week 4 here in CE 187 is a very, very important week. It's one of those weeks that's really going to help separate you from everyone else out there. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts and kind of give you a beginning exposure to what makes this business tick, and that's called money. Because you have to remember, at the end of the day, a chef's #1 responsibility is to generate profit. Whether you own the place, manage the place, or just work there, money is your primary responsibility. So tonight we're going to start taking a look at a couple of those issues to start broadening your horizon from a industry standpoint. Ladies and gents, let's take a look at week 4, our class page. These lessons that are up here that have check marks to the right-hand side, please make sure you complete those. This stuff does go into the grade book, so you do get points for completing these. So it's very, very important. As well, each time you open one of these and you go through it, you do post attendance. So this week, there are 5 different opportunities to post attendance within a 5-day time period. So I would anticipate 100% attendance for the entire week. So we are working this week on menu pricing, and we're going to get a little bit into some cost controls tonight, which I think will be good. We're going to talk a little bit about suppliers and where we buy our foods from and some of the mentality behind that. And then we're going to dive briefly into reducing cost and how we control some of those costs. Ladies and gents, make sure that you do refer. We're going to cover a lot of information tonight, and you might not be able to catch it all. So go ahead and refer to the week 4 slides right here if you have any additional questions or if you've missed anything that we're talking about tonight. And then this week, we do have a knowledge check down here at the bottom, and that is our week 4 assignment. There were a couple of questions this week about how many times you could take the knowledge check. Twice, ladies and gents. You get to take it twice, and the highest score sticks. So make sure that you do read the research materials before you actually take the knowledge check itself. Anybody have any questions about week 4 in CE 187? Anyone? All right, ladies and gents.
Not so much of a question, but more of a comment. I found that I did the reading and it was very familiar because I know we had a class about this before and the formulas were very familiar. So it made it a lot easier. It's like, oh, I remember this.
Right. Was that 160? Have you taken 167 already?
Yes.
Cool. So this is going to serve as a wonderful refresher tonight. So everybody is going to be reminded of some of the things. You have to remember this information. There is nothing more important than this in the restaurant industry, because at the end of the day, numbers dictate everything that we do. So it is extremely critical. Let's take a look at where we are going tonight. Week 4 here in CE 187. So there are 2 primary types of cost in the restaurant industry. The first is fixed expenses, and the second is variable expenses. Fixed expenses are expenses that do not change on a monthly basis. Your salaried management would be a fixed expense. Your rent would be a fixed expense. Your insurance payment, your leases, a lot of your utilities can be considered fixed expenses because they do not fluctuate. So one category is fixed expense, and then the other category is what we call variable cost. Variable cost are things that will fluctuate according to your volume in business or fluctuate because it's not being managed well. For example, labor, right? Your labor should always be a fairly consistent 30%. It will fluctuate every month depending on the volume of business. However, if you're not managing and watching that labor closely, then it will not fluctuate, and according to your sales, it'll fluctuate much higher or much lower. When it comes to working with labor in the restaurant industry, your people must be considered dollars, because every time somebody punches in, they're costing money. Every time somebody is not producing, it's costing money. So it's a different perspective that needs to be looked at. So labor is very, very key in our industry, and it's something really to be managed. And so, for example, if you were to be paying a cook $10 an hour, the actual cost of the cook is right around $12.50 per hour, because there is a thing called payroll burden that many of us do not take into account. Payroll burden includes matched contributions, workman's compensation, insurance, payroll benefits, and other benefits, sick time, leave, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're making $20 an hour, you're actually being paid $25 an hour by your employer. So once you get into management and you take a look at your payroll, make sure you take that additional 25% into consideration when you're doing your budget. It's a number that we often miss, and it will create a great fluctuation in your labor. So be very, very careful about that. So in the restaurant industry, when we combine our fixed expenses and our variable cost, that is what we refer to as our total cost to operate the business. Any questions about that? All right, ladies and gents, moving right along. Food cost. It sounds like everybody got a fairly good dosage of food cost. Can anybody tell me what food cost is? Does anybody have a quick answer? Anybody want to raise their hand and let me know? Anyone?
How much you pay for your food?
What's that?
How much money you put into the food that you pay for your restaurant that you prepare?
That's pretty good. I would take that answer.
When you grab all the revenue and divide by the amount of money that you invested on food.
Correct. That's another way of establishing food cost, right? To figure out what your actual food cost is. Now, food cost is a rather tricky thing. And so far here at Escoffier, what's that?
Chef, in the chat, Gary said what you pay for food.
Good answer. Good answer. I'll take it. So in the restaurant industry, or so far here at Escoffier, we've had you working with recipes. Once you are in industry, you will be working with recipes a lot. And the reason for that is number one, the recipes create consistency. So each time the dish is prepared, the food is exactly the same. However, the bigger picture behind recipes, it is a tool to control cost. So for example, if you discover that there is a fluctuation in your food cost, it's a good possibility that one of your culinary staff members is not following recipes. We had a situation a number of years ago where our cost of dairy was way out of whack at a very high volume establishment, a DoubleTree hotel I was working at. And it was discovered that somebody wasn't following the recipe. They were using 2 slices of Colby Jack on sandwiches instead of 1 slice of Colby Jack. Not a big deal, right? It's just a slice of cheese. Well, you have to take into consideration if they're repeating that same motion and selling 1,500 sandwiches in a 30-day period, it's a lot of cheese, right? It kind of adds up. So recipe consistency is extremely critical. What was that, Chef Crystal?
I was gonna say similar situation. I worked at a restaurant and we served chicken, and the chicken every week when we did inventory, we're missing like half a case of chicken, and nobody's taking the chicken. I'm like, where's the chicken? So what I decided to do is have everybody portion it out. If everybody's supposed to get a 4-ounce portion of chicken and it's already sliced and diced and it's going on salad, I bought the little baggies, put them to the side. There's a difference. The variance, the missing amount lowered. Because, if somebody's saying, if we're telling you use a scoop, your scoop might be leveled, but the next person's scoop might be mounded. And that's taking money out of our business pockets, right? And think about it like, oh, it's 1 ounce, but it's a 4-ounce piece of chicken. So 1 ounce adds up. So every 4th piece, I'm giving away a slice of chicken. I'm giving away a portion of chicken. So you just have to think about it. Like, once I saw it like that, it's like, I'm losing so much money. I need my money.
Yeah. And that's a really valid point. You have to remember, as Chef Crystal was describing, if you're giving away an extra portion of chicken every 4th one that you sell, you're going to have to sell at least 10 more chickens to recuperate the cost of that one chicken. So that's the way this works. It's a domino effect, especially when you start or stop portion control, which is a very critical situation in our industry. So taking a quick look at what we're working on over here. Food costs, as many of you know, Alejandro was talking about taking the total cost of goods sold and dividing it by your purchases, which is pretty close to develop your cost of goods sold. So you're going to take your opening inventory plus purchasing, then you're going to subtract your closing inventory. That will give you your cost of goods sold for the entire facility. That's how much money you spent on food for that 30-day period. Now, in order to figure that out, on a per portion basis, basically what we do is, if we know chicken wings come in a 40-pound case, right? That case costs $80. We'll take the amount of pounds in that case and divide it by the cost, right? Or take the cost and divide it by the amount of pounds in the case, and that will tell us how much each pound will cost, right? So here's a great example. If it costs $5 to prepare a plate of chicken wings and your target food cost is 32%, you're simply going to divide 5 by 0.32, right? And that's going to equal $15.62. Now, obviously, we talked last week about the 95 and the 99s and all that kind of stuff. That's where your menu psychology comes into play. Are you going to charge 16 or are you going to charge 15? And you need to start trying to figure that out. Chef Crystal.
We had a message that came to me earlier today, and it was about the same exact thing. Someone messaged me and said, so one of the answers in the knowledge check is the food cost. You want to divide the food cost by the 0.03%, or you want to multiply it by 3%. And I explained it, but I wanted you to explain it a little bit better.
Sure. If you want to, if you're trying to, and the question was 3 point and then 0.3, and I think that's where some of the confusion comes in. When the decimal point follows the number, you can simply multiply, right? So you're just multiplying it times 3, and that will give you an approximate 30% or 33% food cost. Now, if it's 0.3, as in 30%, you will divide that cost of the food. And I think that's where the confusion lies. So it's
kind of just working the same math problem forwards and backwards, right?
Forwards and backwards, depending on where the decimal place is. If the decimal place is following the whole number, then you will multiply. If the decimal place is before the whole number, you will divide. And I think that's where some of that confusion came into play. Does anybody have any questions? V, what's up?
I have a quick question. When it comes to personal chef and your hourly rate, and how do you figure, like say you go to their house, and I know you have the grocery costs, and then how do you come into the cost as far as what you charge an hour? Like, how does that come into effect? Or am I talking about something totally?
Well, you're going to charge as much as the market will bear, and that's a short and long to that answer. Personal chefs, the expenses of food will be absorbed at cost by whomever you're working for. So, for example, there's no 30% markup or anything like that for a personal chef position. Your labor, however, is negotiable between you and the employer, and you're going to want to charge as much as you possibly can. Traditionally, they will make a little bit of a higher hourly rate because their schedule requires a lot more flexibility, almost in an on-call type fashion. So, does that answer your question, B?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gents, the nuts and bolts. How much money do you make at the end of the month? That's what it's all about, right? How much money am I taking home? So what we simply do, and it doesn't get any more simple than this, your profit equals your revenue minus cost at the end of the day, right? Revenue is the total amount of money that you bring in, right? And then your cost in the restaurant industry are a combination of food and beverage and everything else. We keep a very close eye on three major categories in the restaurant industry. One is food, the other is beverage, and the other is labor. Those three numbers must be managed. You cannot create your menu, cost all your recipes out at 32%, and then sit back and hope that it all works, because it doesn't work that way. As a result, we do inventory on a monthly basis, which gives us a specific percentage of our cost of goods sold, or our food cost, or our beverage cost, which allows us to manage that number. So always remember that. In the restaurant industry, we do not always make money 12 months a year. I know here in our area, we rely heavily upon tourism. Our tourism season is pretty strong. It's around 6 or 7 months. But on those off months, oh boy, yeah, you're eating from the food bank, man. That's about as good as it's going to get. A lot of what's that soup, Chef Crystal? That top ramen, or that noodle soup stuff?
Oodles and noodles.
yeah, oodles and noodles. That's what we're living on during those months. So financial management is critical in the restaurant industry. Every single thing in your restaurant equates to money, so you must manage it all. Percentages, right? So when you open your restaurant, after you develop your menu, you're going to cost all your items out. Based on the cost of those menu items and based on your estimated revenues, you're going to create what is called a budget, okay? The budget is what you estimate your cost to be, and your budget is also your roadmap to financial success. Each month, we will develop our food cost percentage, right? Which is basically, your food cost percentage is how much money you've spent on food divided by how much money you made from food, right? So how much I spent on food. So if I spent $3,000 on food and I sold $10,000 worth of food, my food costs would be 30%. Yes, Chef Crystal.
You guys, okay, so I know that this slideshow is on, the class page and everything. You're going to go back and look at it, but that page that he has up right now, the percentage page, print that out, put it on your refrigerator, put one in your bathroom, put one in your closet, put that up. I use that same sheet for everything, because remembering formulas is kind of hard, but when you have it everywhere, you're going to be able to, oh yeah, this, and this. That is an important sheet that he has up right now. Just
take it to your forehead. Yeah, it'll work. It took
just
me a
wanted
while.
to put the star next to it, just like give you some italicized or some bold right there so that you guys know. Print that page out. If nothing else, print that page.
I cannot emphasize, especially what Chef Crystal is saying, how important this topic is. In the restaurant industry, you will stress. Starting towards the end of the month, you'll do your inventory, and then the days following the inventory are just sleepless because you're hoping that your food costs came in budget. And you have to remember, we're not just talking about managing people in the restaurant industry. We're not talking about managing food, but managing inventory and cost is the true success. Alejandro, what's up?
Are there any on-the-fly formulas, math-wise, when you're trying to think of how much you should charge for something on the fly without remembering specific what you're using right now?
The basic, super simple is just multiply times 3. That's going to give you right about a 33% cost.
So if I cut a 12-ounce steak and it cost me $7, I charge 3.
Yep, you'll charge 21.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just for the steak. I assume that you're probably going to put something else on the plate as well.
Yeah.
So you have to remember to accumulate your entire plate cost, not just the entree. Very, very important. Chef Crystal.
So there's a question in the chat and it says the cost of the maintenance must be considered. What is the cost of not maintaining maintaining or proper cleanup? At what point is a dirty hood filter no longer usable? At what point do they close down for community violations?
Okay, great question. Now, in reference to your hood system and being closed down, most likely that's going to come from your local fire department when they come in to do your fire inspection. The health department will also take note of that when there are what we call hair that is stuck up in your hood system. Chef Crystal's probably seen that over the years, and it's where grease just kind of catches all the lint and everything in the air. When that begins to fall down into your food, the cost of not maintaining a restaurant is beyond your wildest dreams. We have a system in most restaurants. It's called PMS. PMS is what's referred to as preventive maintenance system. A lot of larger companies will actually pay other companies to come in and perform maintenance on all of the refrigeration on a monthly basis. It's so much cheaper in the long run than having to replace condensers. It's a lot easier to pay $100 a month to have somebody come in and just maintain it.
Even if you have your employees like doing nightly things, like I remember when I was a long time ago, we used to have to go up and pull the hoods down and run them through the dishwasher and clean them. I remember us, climbing into the ice machine and making sure there's no pink in the ice machine for us. Just doing those checks. Even one of our employees just walking around and doing a mock health inspection because you know what they're going to look for, you know what they're looking at. So that's kind of like important.
Yeah, huge. Great question. Great question. I've melted a lot of shoes by climbing up to pull the vents out of the hood system, and I smell that rubber melting, and I look down and my feet are on fire because I've been standing on pilot lights or on flat tops or on grills. And it's just, it took me a while to figure it out. I guess I'm slow. But the maintenance is huge in the restaurant industry. It's also a point of pride. It's also a major point of sanitation and your customers' well-being. And if any customers are actually able to take a look at what goes on in that kitchen, if it's not clean and sanitary, your reputation is going to get destroyed. So maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. All right, ladies and gents, taking a look, kitchen labor cost percentage. Same method, right? Kitchen labor cost divided by food sales will tell you exactly where you're at. Other percentage cost, right? Your miscellaneous cost. Miscellaneous cost can be considered cooking fuel, which would include things like sternos and propane. To-go packaging, which can be styrofoam containers or paper boxes or plastic cups, depending on the type of place you work. Those costs accumulate very, very quickly. and must be managed. So you cannot put those things to the side and assume. When a restaurant is losing money, you must figure it out. If you have a balloon and that balloon is leaking air, you just don't look the other way. You do your best to patch it, right? And it's the same thing. Money bleeds from restaurants in many different areas. So you're always going to take the smaller number and divide it by the larger number, and that will give you your cost percentage. It's that simple. So if you sell $1,000 worth of food and it costs you $250 for that food, then your cost of food or your food cost would be 25%. Very, very simplistic. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, ladies and gents.
Chef, there is one question, and it says,
Sure.
how can you get industry averages for restaurants? I don't know if they usually give out their food costs.
What a great segue into this next segment. Whoever asked that question should get extra credit. I mean, that was a great segue. Industry averages. That's a really difficult question to answer because depending on where you're at, what you're charging, and who you're selling it to, that'll have a very great effect on your industry averages. However, as a general rule of thumb, we use what is called the 30, and 30, right? 30, 30, 30. So we have $30 or 30% of our money will go to food. 30% of our money will go to labor. And then 30% of our money will go to other costs. And if you're lucky, 10% of your money will go to your profit. So if you want to put this in a different perspective, out of every dollar that you sell, every dollar that comes into your restaurant, 30 cents to food, 30 cents to labor, 30 cents to miscellaneous cost, and hopefully 10% in profit or 10 cents in profit. It's difficult to tell. I spent several years with Fairmont Hotels, and our food cost was right around 22-24%. But then again, we were charging $100-$150 per person for a buffet, right? But if you're working in a establishment that has a very high volume, but you charge a very low amount for your food, you might have a 32-34% food cost. A steakhouse, for example, will have a food cost of anywhere between 40 and 50% because of the amount of money that they charge. So you have to remember there's a lot of variables that are in that. So basically, if you sell $1,000 a day, right? 300 in labor, 300 in food, and 300 in other costs. And that will help you to calculate your profitability, right? So if you sold 1,000 and then you spent 300, 300, and 300, your total cost would be 900, right? And you will subtract that from your revenue, which will leave you about $100 profit for the day. However, if you're not managing your labor, I don't know, I think we've all seen those employees that come in, they punch in early and they kind of hang out for a while, and then they're the ones out back talking on the phone, or they're the ones out back. We call them clock cowboys because they ride that clock as far as they can go, right? Those are the people that eat up your profit tremendously. So you have to manage your labor just like you manage your checking account. You would not give anybody the liberty to go in there and mess with your money. Don't give them the liberty to do that in your restaurant either. So if you only generated $1,000 a day and you weren't managing your labor and it came in at $400, your food cost came in at $400, and then your miscellaneous cost came in at $400, it's a $200 loss for the day, right? So those numbers add up quickly. So manage your numbers. Any questions, ladies and gents?
We do have one question. It says, what type of competitive advantages can we add to justify higher prices?
Well, That's an interesting question in itself. Number one, higher pricing is going to be subject to your target market. Just like, I mentioned to V a few minutes ago, you're going to charge as much as the market will bear. If your target market is young single family or young families with small children, they're not going to have that much disposable income because they're just starting out. So you're not going to be able to charge a lot for your product. However, if you're working with wealthy retired senior citizens, then it's a whole nother ballpark. So you can charge quite a bit more. So you want to charge, and basically what we do is when we're going to open up a restaurant or a facility in a particular area, we will research all the menus in that area to find out what average prices are. So if I'm going to be selling burgers, I'll check every place that sells burgers within a couple of mile radius to get an idea of where they're charging, because I don't want to be $10 more expensive than the nearest competition. So, that's one of the tools that we use to figure that out. Alejandro, what's up?
I'm not sure this is a difficult question, but when you do course tasting menus, and you charge X amount of money for people to taste all these menus, how do you when you portion out the food that will be going into the courses? How do you use the same formulas of charging people were you to do it in a regular restaurant?
Okay, now at some point in time, food cost does become insignificant. This past Sunday night, I did a 5-course tasting menu at $600 per person, right? Now, so food cost was not an issue, right? Because the total amount of money that was spent on the food at the place I work at was right around 100, 125 bucks, right? For the entire group. And at $600 per person, then it becomes insignificant. And when it comes to doing tasting menus and chef's tables and that type of stuff, we all dream of that huge check average. Normally, we charge anywhere between $200 and $300 to do that, and we're sold out every night. However, there is ambiance that is involved. There's a very, very high level of culinary arts, very high level of unique, high-quality ingredients, very high level of beverages that are served. So everything has to come together. It's not just the food. There's a lot of other things that are involved in that. That answer your question, Alejandro?
It answers it halfway.
Which part didn't I answer?
I don't think I even asked it, but does labor cost actually also affect how much you charge?
Absolutely. So you're going to do your budget, okay? So for example, within that budget, the first thing you do is you are going to estimate your revenues, right? So you've already chosen a place. You know that you can seat 100 people. You plan on seating people twice, right? You've done your menu. You've costed all your items out. You've also learned that your average menu price is $10, we'll say. So you have 100 seats. If you're going to turn each seat twice, that means you will do 200 dinners. You know that your average check is going to be about $10. So your total revenue will be $2,000. You will budget 30% of that $2,000 to labor, right? 30% of 2,000 is 600. So you know you can spend $600 per day on labor, right? So some of that has to be dedicated to the front of the house, the back of the house. That will help you establish how much and how many people you can pay.
Okay, thank you.
Was that complicated? Was Chef Crystal, was that too complicated?
I don't think so. I think that.
Okay.
I think
If
that-
anybody has any questions about that, they can send me a message, and I can kind of help clarify that, but because that's a whole other topic in itself.
There is a question in the chat that says, even though people will buy your food because it's convenient, is it unmoral to overcharge?
It's not unmoral. It's very moral to charge as much as the market will bear. However, overcharging is not smart because eventually it's going to catch up to you and you're going to have issues. You have to be able to support the price and justify the price to the customer. You cannot just open up a hole in the wall shack and then start selling burgers at 50 bucks a burger and hope that you're going to make money. There has to be the ambiance, the service, the quality of the product, the location, the target market, the quality, everything else. So there's a lot that goes into that. Do not overcharge. It never works out in the long run. Okay. All right, ladies and gents, moving on to our next next slide, labor. We've been talking about this for the past couple of minutes, right? So your labor cost on this pizza pie right here is 30%. This pizza pie kind of shows you where all of your money goes, slice by slice, when you're running a restaurant, right? So the two biggest slices in a restaurant are food and beverage and labor. Food and beverage and labor. And ladies and gents, like we said at the beginning of the class, food, beverage, and labor are variable expenses, meaning that they fluctuate radically, right? And when it comes to dealing with people, there are a lot of issues such as pilferage that crop into the picture. Pilferage within the industry is something that is very detrimental to running your organization, right? So Chef Crystal was talking about her chicken here a few minutes ago and losing that chicken. And the first thing that she said was, well, nobody's taking it. So that tells me Chef Crystal automatically thought, oh, perhaps we have a problem with pilferage, which is very, very normal in the restaurant industry. And that's one of the first things we look for to make sure that product's not going out the back door.
The main thing with that establishment is we didn't have a back door, so everything was the front door to get to us. So that's how we knew it was, everything was easy peasy. It was just on the line kind of situation.
So I was running a very large hotel, and we had a number of walk-ins, and the dishwashers would go in the walk-ins towards the end of the night, and they'd sweep out the walk-ins, and they put their trash can right at the front, and they'd take all the boxes out and just do general housekeeping in the walk-ins. And then they would we couldn't figure out what was going on with our meat costs, and we finally caught them one night. They were taking prime ribs and fillets and putting it into the bottom of the trash can, and then putting the garbage on top of that. And then I would watch them, they're just taking their trash out like they normally do, but instead of putting the trash bag in the dumpster, they would set it next to the dumpster. And when they were leaving, they would open up the bag, they would pull out their product, and then next thing you know, we're out. I also caught about 4 different banquet servers doing the same thing with cases of beer and bottles of alcohol right at the bottom. And then, hey, sorry, bye, have a nice day, So pilferage is big. So our two biggest expenses are variable, food and beverage, labor. And then these are some of the other smaller expenses that come out of here. Don't forget, you do have administrative expenses. It's very, very smart to have somebody doing your books for you, a very high qualified accountant, somebody who understands numbers, because you don't want to run into tax situations. It's ugly. My first restaurant, my partner sold out, he left, and I got a call from the Department of Revenue 2 weeks later wanting to know where their $175,000 in back sales tax was. I was like, right? It took a little while to get out of that mess. And if I would have known what I know now, I would have had a certified public accountant handling my books. Would have saved me a lot of money. Utilities, those are going to run right around 8%. We talked about rent the other night. That comes in right around 10%. So profit, this shows profit right around 3%. The industry average is anywhere between 6 and 10% is what you're going to take out of every dollar. So 6 cents, 10 cents per dollar that you take in, you're going to be able to take home. So the bottom line of everything that we've been talking about so far is you must manage those numbers. Any questions? Ladies and gents, on to the next subject. So one of the biggest reasons restaurants go belly up, right, the restaurant industry has an 80% failure rate within their first year. And a lot of people get into the business because they can cook well. And if that's all that it was, we'd all have restaurants, lots of them, right? Chef Crystal and I would have hundreds of restaurants everywhere. The reality is, when most people get into the industry, they don't understand the numbers and they don't understand how to manage them. The numbers is what takes businesses down. You really need to establish par levels for everything. Par levels is how much of that product do I need to keep in the house, right? Every time you buy something, you're taking the money from your bank and you're putting the money onto your shelf, right? When the money's on your shelf, it then becomes at liberty to anybody to mess with. So you want to keep a minimal amount of product to satisfy your flow of business. Develop sales forecasting. Sales forecasts are huge. In the hotel industry, every month we produce what we call 30, 60, 90-day forecast. What is coming down the pipeline? What do I need to prepare for? We've said it before, in this industry, proaction before reaction is where it's at, right? You've got to maintain your quality standards. So many restaurants decide that, hey, I'm buying prime beef, but you know what? If I switch to choice, my profitability will go through the roof. And unfortunately, ladies and gents, it doesn't work that way, because do not assume your customers are not that smart. Because guess what? They are. And it does catch up with you. And then you need to really be focused on portion control. Chef Crystal brought up an excellent example of that earlier in the class. Every single ounce is money. You have to remember, in this industry, we are very repetitive with what we do. I did a cost analysis on sodas at one resort I was the chef at. And I discovered that every month we sold close to 4,000 sodas, right? So I thought to myself, hey, if I can raise the price of those sodas by 25%, imagine all the revenue I could be capturing, right? So I thought that was one solution. But then I also took a look and I noticed how much soda was being consumed by the staff, right? Because every time you give away a soda, you have to sell 3 or 4 more sodas to recuperate the cost of that soda you gave away. Don't give anything away. It's not a charity.
Yeah, we did the same exact thing. There was like, we told the staff that they can have whatever drink they want to have on the soda fountain, obviously. And they were like, okay, but they would get a new cup every single time, and they're disposable cups. And I'm like, guys, those cups cost money. One cup, put your name on it, or get a plastic cup,
Yeah.
put your name on it, get a lid and a straw, and use that. Do not throw away my cups with my logo on it every single day.
Yep.
By the end of the week, I done went through a case for free.
Yep. And that adds up. You have to remember, in this industry, we are constantly fighting a cumulative cost. You may see the fellow in the corner holding that cup, drink it away, nice and cool, and that cup is only, you're thinking, oh, it's only 5 cents, right? It's a cumulative, right? So if that happens 10,000 times in a 30-day period, which is not an exaggerated number, think about how much money you've spent on cups. It's a huge amount of money. So great, great example, Chef Crystal. And then something that's huge is really understanding your sales volume. And a lot of operators don't have any conception of their sales volume, meaning the restaurant industry is a lot like riding a bicycle. There are some times when you're pedaling lightly on a flat surface. Then there's other times when you're pedaling a little bit harder because you're going up a hill. Then there's other times that you're having to pedal not at all because you're going down the hill. Your business is the same. And you have to be able to adjust your variable expenses based on your sales volume. For example, if you pay X amount of dollars in labor when you're very, very slow, you should be paying more money in labor when you're very, very busy, right? The numbers have to fluctuate in conjunction with one another. If I sell $10,000 in 1 week and my food cost is $3,000, and if I sell $5,000 the next week and my food cost is $3,000. I'm not fluctuating and I don't understand my numbers because I've increased my food cost twice. And that's bad. Any questions so far, ladies and gents?
It's even the same exact thing that you said. Like, if on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I'm only making $10,000 in sales, then I probably only have 5 people on the staff that day, versus on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when I'm making $1 million in sales, I probably have 20 people on the staff. Just because it has to fluctuate. But I'm not going to have those same 20 people on Monday's schedule when we're not making any money, because I'm losing money that way.
Yeah. You have to learn to fluctuate. For example, at a resort, right? You're selling $200,000, $250,000 worth of food every month, right? And then all of a sudden you hit a slow spot for a month or two, a shoulder season that we call it, which is a month like September or early January when kids go back to school and resorts slow down. You know what? All your purchasing and your labor needs to go. So you have to learn to forecast, and then you also have to learn to react with those numbers as well. Don't assume that every day you're going to sell exactly $1,152.34. It doesn't work that way because every day is different. Ladies and gents, when it comes to buying food in the restaurant industry, it's a game. It's a game. You thought going to a car dealership was bad? Wait till you start dealing with these folks. We do not go grocery shopping at the store. We don't run to Costco. We don't run to Walmart. We use purveyors depending on the size of our facility. So if it's a larger facility, we're going to use big box distributors is what we call them. Some of those distributors in the United States include US Foods, Sysco, which is the largest in the United States, PAFCO, Orca Bay, which is the seafood distributorship, and then Shamrock Foods, which is the largest here in this region of our country. And you need to remember that just because they come to you and they say that a case of chicken costs $20 doesn't mean you have to pay the $20, because everything in this world, folks, is negotiable, right? They have a lot of ways to negotiate around that. And then they also have a lot of what we call tier pricing, okay? Tier pricing depends on the volume that you purchase. So if you are in tier 1, you are not a very large volume and you're going to pay the highest price. But if you're in tier 5, where that's the maximum volume, you're going to pay a much lower price, and most likely you have all of those prices contractually negotiated, which you should do regardless of the size of your company. What we pay for food is negotiable and must be watched very, very closely. You can lose your shorts on it. Isn't that right, Chef Crystal?
That is very true. That is very true. You have to, and I think I said this last week, I usually get a pricing guide from each available supplier in my area. So maybe USA Foods and Sysco, get them all together and I'll look, okay, they're selling chicken for this price and these people are selling it for 10 cents less. I'm buying it over here. Yep. Or, you know, they're selling beer for this price, but they have the same beer and it's cheaper and I can buy half a case versus the whole case when nobody really drinks this, but I want to sell it. You know, you have to look at your options.
Absolutely. Great. Very well said. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, to everything that we are talking about tonight, you need to manage the restaurant's checkbook just like you manage your own checkbook. And that means that if you were going to go out and buy something, I would assume that 99% of us out here take a look at the prices before we buy something. Can we get a better deal on it? Is something else less expensive? You need to have that same mentality. You cannot pick up the phone and order a case of 5-and-up Pismo tenderloins and assume that you're getting the best deal on it, because guess what? They'll take you to the market. Somebody said they'll overcharge, and is that bad? Not according to them. They're pretty good at it. So they will do it. Some of the things that you can do to save money in a restaurant, lots of things you can do. However, this first suggestion I absolutely love, right? Cross-train your staff. And that wasn't something big when I first started years ago, but now it's something that's very, very modern. So if we have, for example, a hostess, right? We will cross-train her and teach her how to serve, how to bus, how to get behind the bar. And then as well, we'll take kitchen staff and train them how to work in the front of the house. If we have a broiler cook, we'll train them in the pantry. If we have somebody in the pantry, we'll train them in prep. And this way, everybody knows how to work at all these different stations. The more cross-training you do, the more you can stretch your labor dollar without having to hire additional purposes. For example, if you have a pantry cook that quits and you have 2 line cooks that know the pantry, you can split that job in between those 2 line cooks and then save yourself the money from having to do that. So cross-training is extremely important. Now this is kind of tricky right here, employee meals and drinks. I'm sure Chef Crystal will have an opinion on this, but and I want to hear it because it's always a very debatable subject in our industry. Number one, if you don't feed your cooks, they're going to eat anyway, right? I don't know, Chef Crystal, how many times you've walked behind the line and they're like crouched down there, you know, shoving stuff in their food.
Like, oh, is that good?
Yeah.
Did we pay for that?
I'm just tasting, right? Creative accounting is a great solution here because when it comes to feeding your staff and providing them with beverages, that money has to be accounted somewhere. You cannot just let it get absorbed into your cost of goods sold. It's not fair to you and it's not fair to your restaurant. So a lot of times what we do in the industry is that becomes a benefit to the employees, right? And a lot of times it'll become a taxed benefit. I talked at the beginning of the class about that 25% payroll benefit that we pay people above and beyond in that $10. A lot of times we'll roll the cost of employee meals into that dollar figure in order to remove it from our food cost. So it even gets a little bit more creative. So if I know I have a staff of 10 that eats $25 a day, and every 10 days, that's $250 times 3 for a month, that's $750. I will back that number out of my food cost and I'll roll it into my employee benefits and boom, my food cost is not affected and we're looking good. So you must think these things through. And then another thing that we really like to focus on when it comes to saving money is this one right here. Use same ingredients in different dishes. That is called dovetailing, right? Dovetailing is when you take, for example, if you have 5-and-up Pismos, right, which are beef tenderloins with the chain on them still. You can buy that product and serve Chateaubriand. Then you can do blue tips with beef. Then you could do a grilled filet mignon salad. Then you could, with the heads and the tips and the chain, and you could make beef vegetable soup. So there's 3 or 4 items from one product. So that's the way you need to think about your menu items. Very, very critical. And Chef Crystal, we were talking about pilferage a minute ago. I have that here in my notes to talk about that. Have you had to deal with a lot of pilferage?
Is this explain? I don't understand.
Regarding food, people taking food when they're not supposed to.
I have dealt with it before, but it's more of like small scale, like, oh, I made myself a sandwich and I went on lunch versus I was left with a whole case of avocados. You know what I mean? Because avocados are expensive and I can't lose avocado. That's expensive. But if I see somebody, or if I would see somebody making a sandwich, I'm like, oh, what are you doing? Top chefing it up? Nice. Let's make sure that we bring that up. So, you know, if I catch you, I catch you, and then you're going to go pay for it. If I don't catch you,
I like it. I like it.
But for the most part, with like employee meals and stuff like that, we give I've worked at places where we give discounts for employees. You get 50% off your meal. I worked at places where, you know, we have a list of meals that the employees can pick from, and they're all like fried food and
cheapy stuff. Yeah. Ladies and gents, the term pilferage is basically taking something that doesn't belong to you. And it comes in a lot of various forms in the restaurant industry. Chef Crystal and I mentioned a couple of things about, making sandwiches or taking things out the back door. But there are other forms of pilferage that are prevalent in our industry. For example, ringing a customer's meal in and then having them prepare the food, serve the food, and then voiding the check and then keeping the cash when the customer pays cash. I had a individual, we had our liquor costs were running extremely high and we couldn't figure it out. We actually brought undercover people in to try to determine it. We couldn't do it. And we finally caught the guy after a long period. He was bringing in his own bottle of vodka with him at nighttime, right? So every time he would sell a vodka drink and the customer would pay cash, the cash went in his pocket. And we were never able to track it because it never fluctuated within our inventory or within our POS system. There are very smart people out there that get away with doing these things. When somebody comes in and they punch in, they clock in, hello, and then they go sit down out in your restaurant and chat with friends for a few minutes, that is pilferage because they are stealing your labor cost, right?
Yeah. I do not. That is not allowed. If you come in and you aren't dressed for work and you're clocking in, hey, what are you doing?
Yep.
What's going on? Where's your uniform? Where's your name tag? Where's your apron? Let's go get that in. Then we can go clock in. And like at first it's like, oh, Chef Crystal's picking on me. But then after a while, they see me looking and they're like, I'm getting my stuff on. I'm getting my jacket. It becomes like a habit, and I don't have to say those things. But yeah, even people going out back. There's tables waiting and I'm like, where's such and such? Her section is, full up and she's not out here. Walk outside. Hey, I see you on your cell phone. You're having a whole conversation. So does your table need you? Come on, let's go.
A restaurant staff is just like a kindergarten sometime, and they are going to push you as far as they can push you and see if they can get away with it. If you don't manage it, guess what? They're going to run you over and they're going to take everything you got. Ladies and gents, at the beginning of the class, we talked about all the different ways we can post attendance. There's 5 different ways this week. We also talked about the knowledge check, understanding that we can only take that twice and only the highest score sticks. So rock on, ladies and gents. You guys are fantastic. We are more than halfway done with this course, and we are impressed. If anybody has any questions, make sure you reach out. You ask Chef Crystal or myself. We are here for your support. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap it up?
Chef, you did say that the knowledge check can only be taken twice now?
That's correct.
2 times, guys.
2 times. Dos. Yep. All right, ladies and gents, have a fantastic evening. Thanks for a great live session. Talk to you soon.